Let's get to the Iverson piece here. A lot of people talking about the statue here in the chat. It was trending earlier, making fun of Iverson's small size statue. So this may help a lot of people because I have seen some apologies from a lot, but they didn't understand, and I had to tell a few people in my life, here's how it goes. They have a Legends Walk where it goes from one end of the practice facility to the entrance where the players, the coaches, and the Sixers staff go in their area as well. Along that walkway are a number of miniature size statues representing and acknowledging the Sixers franchise and these individual players. Charles Barkley, being one of them, also has one of these smaller size statues along that walk. Some of the other Sixer legends also have these statues. The only life-size real statues that we've seen released in LA with Kobe and Shaq. And now here, when we talk about what's at the center, Wilt and Doc. We know about the Rocky statue at the Art Museum.
Right.
The Sixers lease their time here at the center. They don't own it.
Right.
It's the Comcast company.
Yeah.
It's the Flyers. If they're going to give Iverson,
that is a very public point of contention right now, by the way.
Absolutely. Who I think is deserving of anybody else outside of those guys. Charles Barkley, in a sense, of course. Certainly Allen Iverson deserves a real size statue. I think they would like to do that at their new arena, should that get completed later down the line, and not at this particular spot.
If they're going to give Iverson like a Rocky-esque statue, they're not going to put it in a closed-off portion of Camden.
No.
Yes.
No. So for the people who are unclear of what the small size statue is about with Allen Iverson, more so for the folks outside of the city, even though we know people here did not understand why it was so small, it's because that's for the purposes of their walk. They can't have these giant statues going up and down.
Well, and they have to have like 11 of them in a row.
Yes.
Yeah,
and they're not done, by the way. Right? They're going to have more.
But Joe's going to need one in a couple decades.
Might need one. And because the practice facility is going to be there. While they're looking for their new arena, maybe in Center City, the practice facility, Derek, is not going anywhere.
Right.
So that Legends Walk is going to extend even further past Allen Iverson, who got his today.
Yeah.
And you were there. Can you tell us about it and your thoughts in general of the whole thing?
I think a lot of people, I think you're exactly right. I think a lot of people thought like, oh, they're giving AI a statue, like this is unique to AI, and they're just honoring him in a way like you mentioned, almost like a Rocky statue. That's not what's going on here. They have a Legends Walk that already exists. It's got a whole bunch of people, everyone from Dolph Schayes to Moses Malone to Mo Cheeks, Charles
Bobby
Barkley.
Jones.
There's a whole bunch of people on there already. They just added Iverson to that list. So it's not like they gave like this. I don't want to say it's not special because it is special to have a statue. There's only a 10 of them there. But
that's why it was so crowded there today, because it's special.
Right. But it's not like this is just about Iverson. It's about all of their legends. It's Legends Walk.
Yes.
Iverson's looks a little bit smaller than the others because most of them are big men, like skying up for a rebound or a dunk, whereas Iverson is bending over, crossing over Jordan. So he's leaning over. He's going to, first of all, he's a smaller person than Moses Malone and Wilt Chamberlain and Charles Barkley, but also he is bending over, whereas most of the other ones are reaching up to dunk. It's in part because of the pose they used to honor him with. I think a lot of people thought it was either going to be the crossover. In fact, they let a bunch of fans in there as well, and one of them was yelling like, "I knew it was going to be the Jordan crossover. I knew it. They banned a crossover because it happened to Jordan." And like a lot of people expected this would be the pose they chose. The other one was cupping the ear. That was the only other obvious one.
That was my favorite, the cupping of the ear.
But
that was
I think the pose they chose, which I think is a good pose.
I
don't have anything against the pose, but I think it made the picture look smaller than it actually is when you see it in person. Which again, not a lot of people will see it in person because it's a closed-off portion of the practice facility. But when you see it in person, I don't think it's nearly as bad. In fact, I have a picture of it up on my Instagram. If you want to go check that out, just search for me. You'll find it. I don't really use Instagram for work purposes, but this is one where I do have a picture.
Derek has a really good photo of it, so go check it out. And with the, first of all, he had a headband on, right? In the
I think so.
I think he had a headband on, and he didn't have the questions. His first signature shoe. I think he had this, and I bring this up because the jersey that he is wearing is the one that all of you love, the black and the white with
Yeah,
the
he
gold.
does have a headband.
He has a headband on. So that's not the Jordan crossover. I just wanted to bring that up. That's not the Jordan crossover because it was his rookie season. He didn't have his braids yet, and he wasn't wearing headbands as much at that time. And when he did have it, he had there was a starter pack of the braids.
Okay.
Not the one that when it became Iverson with the braids, but it was longer with the headband and all that stuff. So it's not the Jordan crossover. It was just his signature crossover.
Okay.
And again, the sneakers, as I detailed on
Probably
when you had it up there.
Don't want to put it on Jordan just because Jordan might take that a little bit personal.
Right. And it wasn't the question. I mean, the questions, he had the answers.
I like that
on.
you break down which crossover it is based on what shoe he's wearing. I appreciate that.
He had the answers on.
It's the kind of attention to detail that I would never know because I'm not a sneakerhead, but I appreciate that you do.
So he had the answers on and not the questions, and he probably dropped Antonio Daniels twice in that game against Washington in South Philadelphia at the center. So just again to clear it up for the people who didn't know, it's the Legends Walk, where there are going to be multiple statues put up there. They don't have everybody. Mo Cheeks is up there.
He's up there.
So they have many others that are probably going to be like Joel and Tyrese Maxey eventually.
But that'll be quite a while.
That's quite a while away. But the point of it was, the reason why it's small is because, number one, he's crouched over in the crossover position, but more so because they need the space to continue to add these statues along Legends Walk in Camden at the practice facility. How cool.
I will say, I didn't, like, when I saw the statue, it didn't even cross my mind that this would be a controversy. It didn't even cross my mind.
The only thing was, did they choose the right pose? Crossover or step over Tyronn Lue or cuffing of the year? Something like that.
I think the step over would have been a little too iconic. I don't think they wanted to show a player up, whereas a crossover can just be a generic crossover.
If they do, which we think they might, at the new arena, wherever it may be, cuffing of the year?
Well, there I think a step over would work because you want to get the fans riled up. I could go either. Cupping of the year is a more iconic one.
Yeah.
Well, they're both iconic.
They're both.
Either one.
And you know exactly who it is when he does this and has the finger sleeve, the rubber band, the head, all that cool stuff. Just your thoughts, though. You were there. I was not. There were so many people. There were legends there.
Oh, yeah.
with Derek. Derek's a legend, too, by the way.
Yeah. Most of the 01 team was there. It was really, look.
Coach said to buy a statue. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyway, can't believe you're ruining the AI moment with Tobias talk. No, look, I think the way Kyle put it, all three of us take our jobs pretty seriously and try to be professionals and understand that we are here to do a job and cover a team and to remain unbiased in doing so. And I think it's a little easier to do that now because everyone that we are around, we've been covering the entire time as journalists. We've been doing this long enough now. AI and a couple others, like there's been a couple instances here where like Charles Barkley, Julius Erving, it still brings out the like, oh no, I know these, like I know Allen Iverson as a fan, not as a journalist. And I still have that moment a little bit. And being in the presence, look, I'm not going to say I fell in love with the game because of Iverson, because I loved basketball even before then. A lot of it because of having played it growing up. But Allen was a big part of taking it from something that I enjoyed and I loved to being obsessed about it. And I think that's true for a lot of people in the Delaware Valley. I think, there's a whole bunch of sort of places my mind goes on this. First of all, I wish I covered him in that team because, first of all, the access back then was just different. The athletes were a little bit more raw and unfiltered, and he was exceptionally unique. I think he has a connection with the fan base that I don't think I've ever seen, maybe in any sport, really. Part of that comes down with the passion that he played with. Part of that comes down with, I think basketball lends itself to that, right? Because football, you've got like a helmet on. It's hard to see facial expressions. Yeah. Baseball is sort of like a more stoic sport. Basketball, there's just a raw emotional component to it. And there was no player who's ever been more raw and emotional than Iverson. And the way that he wore every emotion on his sleeve, the good, the bad, the ugly. When he was excited, when he was frustrated, when he was like his flaws, his greatness, everything was just right out in the open in a way that I've never seen before. And in today's era where it feels like everyone has not only a PR staff, but like a full team of handlers and whatnot, everyone just, it feels like there's a filter on athletes that Iverson never had. And I just don't know if we're ever going to see anyone really capture a fan base the way he did. It was really like growing up was great. And I mean that, like so much of Iverson's legacy right now, I don't say rests on 2001, but it certainly adds to his legacy in a big way. And there was so much, like if you look at the rest of his playoff track record, there weren't a lot of real success stories. Like there was a lot of frustration involved in the Iverson era. He was almost traded. Like there was a lot of, I think, frustration with that team. And just having one breakthrough moment, one moment of greatness can take a era that was a little bit frustrating maybe to one that you'll never forget. And I really mean that, where it reminded me that I hope that this generation of basketball fans gets to experience that with Joel Embiid. I really do.
Yeah, that was a great time. Loved basketball before Allen Iverson. Iverson burst onto the scene when I was in college in '95. Of course, I knew about him. Family in the Virginia DMV area, so I knew about him already. And then when the whole story with the bowling alley, we all know about the story that we know, which brought a lot of attention to so many in the world. And then going to Georgetown again. My uncle, who was 5-6 years older than me, may rest in peace. My guy, right? So he's in Baltimore, and he's like, yo. So we would talk about guys coming from Dunbar and DeMatha, like B. West, and Brian Westbrook. And a big thing in the conversation when I would go visit with he and his older friends in the barbershop talk was Allen Iverson right there and Bubba Chuck in Georgetown with what they were doing, Georgetown, Victor Page, all those guys, John Thompson. And then the Sixers stink, and he's eligible for the draft. He's coming out, and your team wins the lottery, and he's going to get him. You knew it. All the Canby talk and the Marbury talk. Discussing Kobe in the sense that you understood it, but they weren't going to take him with the number 1 overall pick, maybe trade down and possibly take Kobe. But you knew Iverson was coming to the city. And the buzz around that when he got here, the Reebok commercial where he's sitting in the car and he's driving with the hat before, he's in the car, you see him, the camera's following him while he's sitting in the car, top down. And it's just the city and Iverson, and you're just seeing it was one of the legendary commercials and all of that. Then you fast forward, 50-point games and 40-point games, the stretch that he had as a rookie, beating that streak against Cleveland and Bobby Sohr just running around, grabbing on for his life, he and Terrell Brandon trying to keep up with Iverson in that game. Then you move to 2001. He's almost traded before that.
Yep.
Thank
you, Matt Geiger. Literally the only reason that we had the 2001 run is because Matt Geiger didn't want to, turn down like $1 million trade
kicker.
bonus.
He had a trade kicker and to go to Detroit.
And that's what I mean with legacy. Like some of these legacies that we just now look at as fact were so close to not happening, so close to not existing, required one bit of luck or a, Vince Carter shot that was 2 inches away from heartbreak. Like I think everyone looks at things in the past as like this was destined to happen, whereas so many things are by a thread.
Yeah, man. And to see them go 10-0, I'll never forget this, Derek, that season.
Yeah.
10-0.
41-14.
At the All-Star break. When they went 10-0, it was like, oh, I don't say this. But I sit there and talk with, my kid, my youngest, she was born, and my, talking with her mom at the time. We would sit there. Big basketball fan she is as well. And Derek, I'm literally like this as we talk with our folks. Shit, this team is good.
Yeah.
And they might be that good. So you remember that, the All-Star game, how he's propped up on the All-Star game. He's the MVP. Larry Brown, they make the trade. I'm pissed off because Theo Ratliff was playing so well, even though he broke his hand. Let them ride it out. Nazi and Todd McCullough, let them ride it out. Theo will be back, right?
Theo was never the same, though.
He was never because he was also gut punched by the trade, and he never recovered from that. And then they go into and they lose game 1, number 1 seed. They lose game 1 to Indiana, they could never beat Reggie Miller and Indiana in the postseason. Then they come back and sweep them the rest of the way in a 5-game series, which I love 5-game series. Then they go do it, and they do, and we know what the history is with him, but you watch the game tonight. Paolo Banchero has braids in his hair. He's wearing a headband.
Yeah.
Larry Hughes was with you as one of the legends there visiting. And he says, I took the beating for all of these young guys. Look at what they do now. The way they dress. The way that they carry themselves with their headbands, their braids. I think it was Marshawn Lynch said, the WWJD, the What Would Jesus Do bracelet that he would wear. He would wear a rubber band. as well. Dawn Staley was also notorious. Mo Cheeks as well. They would also do that as well. But he did a lot of that stuff. The shooting sleeves that they wear right now, they don't realize that he wore it because he really had a messed up elbow.
It's become a fashion statement.
Yes, it's a fashion statement. So we say all of that because he did create a pathway. He was a trailblazer for a lot of different things. Not always good, but certainly he did a lot of things because of them. And when you look at Shaquille O'Neal, Kevin Garnett, who I can't stand, but they're legends. Kevin Garnett, I can't stand. We talked about that before.
Talked about that.
And but they always show that respect for him as a 6-foot guard, as Matt Cord would say, from Georgetown. You know,
and he wasn't 6 foot.
And he wasn't 6 foot. I'm 5'6", for real, 5'6". He is like right there with Derek.
It was funny.
Who is taller than
Billy
Allen
was
Iverson.
talking about it. Like, for what he's able to do at 5'11", and he made a joke, something along the lines of like, we can stop lying about it.
Yeah,
He's not 6
exactly. You
foot.
don't have to. Yeah. Hey, when I played, they would list me at 5'8". Right. So there you go.
No, and that, I mean, look, like I said, basketball
Legendary.
is great because you have so much access to the raw emotion going on in the game because they're not wearing a helmet, because it is a more emotional game. And to have a 6-foot guard play the way he did and ping pong off of big men in the paint, it was just a joy to watch. And I think about this all the time of, man, I wish he would have played in this era of basketball. And I think a lot of people get caught up on like, well, he wouldn't be as good because he's not as a good enough shooter. Well, first of all, he'd put more effort into it. But second of all, can you imagine him playing with a space floor, like a 5-out? Like, drop him in place of Jaylen Brown right now on that Celtics team with all that shooting and spacing and ball movement, and just watch him. Like, how are you going to defend him off the dribble?
They can't touch him.
He could get by the level of defense whenever the hell he wanted. He just always had a big man in the paint and usually a couple of wings in there too, because you had Tyrone Hill and George Lynch on the court as your forwards. I'd love to see him with modern NBA spacing.
They could not touch him. They can't touch him.
Yeah.
The defensive rules today, they can't touch him.
Either he would score 6 layups a night or he would be at the free throw line 15 times per. It would be fun to watch. But like, it really is just, I just don't know if we will get a connection with an athlete like that again.
He's one of one.
He really is.
Do you think you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
For a lot of ways. For his style of play and then the other stuff that you just talked about.
And even the flaws. I feel like a lot of the flaws in the moment were tough to live with. Like,
there was some tough
whether
ones.
it was the off-court ones or the practice habits or what, which is funny to think of now because teams barely practice.
And
he'd go great in today's NBA.
And stars only play 60 to 65 games.
Yeah, well, he
played all of them.
He wouldn't like that, but
he wouldn't like minute restrictions.
With how lighter they get, and I'm not. This isn't me criticizing the NBA for light practices. Like, I think there's a lot of load management talk, and you need your stars healthy, so they cut back on that a lot. There's a lot of science behind that. But there wouldn't be the controversy. But like I said, even his flaws, it just made him more human.
Yes.
And I think as fans, we want a connection with our athletes. We want to see the humanity, the good and the bad, and the fact that they care. And Allen Iverson had all of that. It was an immediate environment where he got to show it. Like I said, I feel like now it's overly PR'd to the point where you strip a little bit of that imperfection away. And in doing so, you strip a little bit of that connection with the fans away. And I think they think that they can then recover that with social media, but social media is fake. And I think there was a connection of vulnerability with Allen Iverson that I've just never seen with the star athlete before. And I don't know if we're going to be able to see, since, because there is that multiple layers of filters on athletes today.
Unbelievable player, man. And well-deserved to get that statue.
We all silly like the mayor.